Well, it's time to end another 3-game match week in a championship with match week 18 predictions. There's one new manager, there's one team that still haven't played yet this week, and there's an awful lot of big games in a championship this weekend. If you're looking forward to it and you want to get involved as always, then get down in the comments below and give us your predictions for this weekend's action. If you beat or match my overall score for match week 18, you will get a shout out in the next recap when we look ahead to next weekend's fixtures. But for now, before we go and look ahead to the weekend, we've got to have a quick look back at what happened in midweek, where I actually had a surprisingly good one, set off by a brilliant Tuesday. My gamble on Burnley Coventry didn't pay off, but the rest of the Tuesday was pretty flawless. Perfect scores for the wins for Sheffield United and Watford, 3-0 and 1-0 respectively, and 4 other correct outcomes on Tuesday night, and also then just 1 goal short on Wednesday with the correct Leeds prediction to win against Luton Town. Overall, 2 perfect scores and 5 other outcomes gives me 11 points. And it was a very evenly matched week because a lot of people were sort of in that region from 7 points upwards. But I did manage to fall near the top this time thanks to the perfect score prediction. So let me get to the trusty pen and paper and give you guys a shout out, because level on me with 11 points, Calvin and Bandit, you are in joint second place with me. But 4 people managed to pip us to 12 points. A lot of you doing so on the final game with that Swansea win as well. Gordon, Tim, Leo and Nigel, 12 points apiece for all 4 of you. Inseparable at the top for match week 17. Let's go and move ahead to the weekend now, and we start with a mouth-watering game on Friday night. It is Sheffield United versus Sunderland. Maybe not going to be the highest scoring based on paper and recent form, but the last 6 games, both teams unbeaten. Slightly different stories to that though. Sunderland, 3 0-0 draws and 5 draws in a row. They were obviously held by West Brom, who tend to like drawing 0-0 at the moment. A decent enough performance defensively. Didn't offer West Brom anything, no shot on target. 1 decent chance during the game, that was it. And they were the aggressors without creating bundles of great opportunities. Loads of corners, loads of set pieces, but couldn't quite make it count. For Sheffield United, a comprehensive win at home to Oxford, really comfortable victory. It was over at the hour mark in truth, and they now make it 5 wins out of 6. That draw at Coventry wasn't bad with 10 men for so long either. They look right up there, and you've got to say the top 2 look the strongest 2 at the minute, Leeds United and Sheffield United. So going into this one, it's quite hard to call, because do you go with Sheffield United to continue their brilliant home form, or do you go with Sunderland to stick with draws galore? I feel that run has got to end eventually, and I feel one of the unbeaten runs will end here. I'm going to go for it to be Sunderland's this time. I'm going Sheffield United, not convincingly, in a narrow, pretty tough fought game by 1-0 at Bramall Lane. Let's move on to Saturday and the 3 early kickoffs when Middlesbrough face, as I'm recording, managerless Hull City. Who knew sacking Liam Rosenior for the exciting brand of football and the man who couldn't stop conceding goals at Hamburg would go wrong? Tim Walter was in and now he is out at Hull City. And Michael Carrick will be almost as frustrated this week, you have to say, because a 1-0 defeat at home to Blackburn, just as it looked like they got their goal scoring boots on, having scored 4, 5 and 6 in the 3 games previous. And it wasn't the fact they didn't score in midweek, it was arguably the fact that they didn't create an awful lot, which is not something you could say about them much this season. Restricted well by Blackburn, who we'll get on to later, and in the end sucker punch late on as well. For Hull City, it was 4 defeats in a row. At home to Sheffield Wednesday, a pretty drab performance. I mean, we called it in fairness, and on another day, if Hull had taken a couple of great chances, they could have got a point, but a lot of possession, not a lot of progress going forward. It's basically what we predicted pre-season, albeit we probably didn't have them quite as low as 22nd at that point. But we knew it was going to be a downgrade from Rosenior. It's proven that way. Now we wait and see who the next man will be. Mark Robins is the early favourite on paper. I've got to be honest, I'd be very surprised if he took it, but that's for a later day. We've got to look ahead at Hull City here and whether they can get something at Middlesbrough. Now, you'd imagine, given the fact that there's going to be an interim in charge, they're not going to come out all guns blazing. It will be about being a bit more robust and a bit more solid. They haven't been able to score goals recently. They've only scored 1 in their last 4 matches. Michael Carrick in the other dugout must be tearing his hair out, so I've no idea what to go for here. I think we'll see a spirited Hull performance, but I don't think it'll be enough. I am going to go for Borough to find the net this time and respond with a 2-1 victory at home to Hull City. The second early game is Oxford United versus Millwall, and Oxford, I know they're playing against the top sides generally now, but they are falling out of form in style. 5 defeats in 6, their only win against Hull, ironically. And I know you've got Sunderland, Sheffield United and Watford away there, 3 of the best home records in the league. And I know Borough had a brilliant day against them, but you've got to start to be concerned because they're drifting. They're only 2 points from that relegation zone. And it's another tough game at home to a Millwall side who haven't played in midweek because of that floodlight failure at Fratton Park. Were 6 unbeaten before with 4 successive 1-0 wins and 2 1-all draws, including a good one against Sunderland last week. So where do you go with this? Apart from their last 3 home games, Oxford have been in brilliant home form all season, but they're starting to show signs that they can concede. Millwall have been relentless defensively in recent weeks, and we're starting to see the old school, efficient, hard-working and dogged defensive performances. So I'm going to have to sit on the fence with this one. There's part of me that thinks Millwall nick it 1-0. I'm going to be bold, go for the Championship's favourite scoreline. There were none of them in midweek. There's got to be one on Saturday. 1-1 for Oxford Millwall. And the final early kickoff is, well, a resurgent QPR travelling to Watford. Let's start with the home side who have been brilliant at home all season. They continued that with another 1-0 home win, this time at home to Bristol City, which we correctly called a really hard-fought victory. They only had 1 shot on target all game. They were arguably the second best side for the most part. But that's not a Watford we've seen a lot since they've come back to the Championship. Resilient, hard-working, putting their bodies on the line. We're starting to see a bit of an inkling that Tom Cleverley has got into the mental side of this Watford team rather than just the technical ability. So that is a potential positive for them. Now 3 unbeaten, again only 1 defeat in the last 6. For QPR though, just relief. A much needed victory away at Cardiff. A good performance, an important result. A brace for Salah, of course, incredibly important to get someone scoring. On another day, we've got to be fair here. Cardiff dominated the ball, had twice the amount of chances, probably had the best chance of the match as well. It could have been a very different outcome. This is not QPR are back and are going to fly up the table, but it's a win, and quite often that's just what you've got to do. For this game, no, I think Watford at home are far too strong on paper. They've been brilliant at home all season. I'm going to go for them to continue with a 2-0 victory against QPR. This week is unique in that we've got an in-between kickoff at 1:30 at Ewood Park. It is Blackburn Rovers versus Leeds United. Leeds continued their brilliant form with a 3-0 demolition of Luton. It was basically a training session, to be honest. Luton have been poor this season, but Leeds took full advantage. And while, yes, on the break they gave up some very good opportunities, on another day it could have been a different scoreline. It was just a feeling of control for the most part, and it was only a few little defensive errors, which we saw Swansea capitalise on the week before, that almost cost them. Against QPR, they were good at home. Against Plymouth, they were good at home, but they've had their troubles on the road, and that is what Blackburn will be looking to take advantage of. They've weirdly flipped now. They've suddenly lost their home form in their last 2 games, losing against Sheffield United and Stoke, and they found a way to start winning away from home with an incredibly impressive performance at Middlesbrough in particular. So you've got to say John Eustace doing probably the best job you could have expected at this point. A lot of people had them down there, and I know they made some great late signings in the window, but this probably exceeds a lot of fans and players' expectations. It is a hard one to call yet again because Leeds, they will give up an opportunity or two. We've seen that. Clean sheets galore at home, on the road not so much. I'm not going to go for my traditional 1-0 away Leeds win here. I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline. I think Blackburn gets something. 1 apiece. Well, I don't like to use this word in conjunction with Bristol City because they are notoriously inconsistent and let us down here. But Bristol City host Plymouth Argyle in what many have to dub a home banker here. Plymouth were beaten 6-1 away at Norwich to continue their wretched away form this season. Borja Sainz gifted a hat-trick. It was a terrible defensive effort, and I think Wayne Rooney summed the game up pretty well. It did not flatter Norwich, that scoreline. For Bristol City, back-to-back 1-0 defeats against sides in the top 6, and there's no shame in that. We've seen against Burnley, Watford, Sheffield United, they're not quite there as one of those top sides, but they're in that mix just behind as that sort of outside playoff push, but maybe in the top half, and that's what Bristol City need to become a little bit less inconsistent. However, 5 wins, 7 draws, 5 defeats paints pretty much a different picture this year, and it makes this one a little bit more difficult than it should be to call. However, Bristol City should be winning at home to Plymouth. I think it'd be a shock if Plymouth win any away game at the minute, and I'm going to go for Bristol City to win comfortably. The goals are flowing into Plymouth's goal at the minute, so I'm going to go for 3-1 for the home side at Ashton Gate. As we move on to Frank Lampard's Coventry City, manager special coming later this evening. They host Cardiff City in a first game under new management. They were beaten 2-0 in midweek away at Burnley, their last game under interim management. Burnley a good side, but they didn't create a lot and it was a pretty poor performance. However, it's a new dawn now and they've got a chance to push up the table. Still only 10 points off the playoffs. It is a very tight championship table compared to some of the recent seasons. But what Coventry have got to do is stop the ball going in the net. It's 8 conceded, 2 in 4 successive games. They've got to find a way to stop that against a Cardiff side who have really struggled in their recent performances. The game against QPR, loads of shots, loads of opportunities, could not put the ball in the back of the net. And after a great start under interim management, it's 3 defeats in 4, only 1 point during that time. And Cardiff now just 1 point and 1 place above the drop zone. So a big game for Frank Lampard, has a chance to push Coventry up the table, needs to create a good impression. I think he will. I think Cardiff are on a downward spiral at the minute. And I'm going to go for Coventry to win this one by 2-0. I wouldn't rule out Cardiff scoring though, if Coventry gets sloppy. Let's move on to the second game of the week I'm dreading, which is Norwich City versus Luton Town. The Leeds-Luton game went pretty much as I predicted. We mentioned the Hull win before that. Thomas Kaminski made 2 or 3 outstanding saves on another day Hull win it against Leeds United. You could argue they gave up great chances on the counter and Luton could have scored 3 or 4 with the only chances they had. But there's no doubt for the majority of the game, Leeds were the dominant side. They were in control. They were basically having a training session in Luton's half. The away form has become a huge concern. Even in the Premier League, Luton were competitive on the road. That's not been the case in the last 2 away games, and it is now 6 successive away defeats in the Championship. For Norwich, a 6-1 demolition of Plymouth against a defence that seems to be in pretty similar form to Luton's. Plymouth have the worst defence in the Championship. Guess who's his second worst? It's Luton Town. Only 5 goals behind. Will that be matched at the weekend? God, I hope not. But Norwich getting back into form. Borja Sainz, if you don't mark him out of a game, he's going to cause chaos. And Luton have been letting in poor goals from set pieces. Norwich have been strong from them recently. I'm going to go for Norwich to win comfortably by 3-1 at Carrow Road. 4 to go, 3 more on Saturday, and we start with the game that I wouldn't recommend paying for a ticket for this weekend. It is Preston North End versus West Bromwich Albion. Both sides drew 0-0 at the weekend. Both sides have drawn 2 of their last 4, 0-0, and neither of them have got a great record for winning this season. Preston starting to suffer a little bit now, just 2 points above the drop zone. West Brom, I mean, they've conceded 11. It's a great defensive record, but scoring 1 a game, not likely to be enough to get them into the playoffs. We expect a disciplined Carlos Corberán performance as always. They delivered that against Sunderland, but no shot on target. Created 1 good opportunity, but otherwise it was all Sunderland, to be fair. They came for a point, they got a point by the looks of it. Again, for Preston, away at Stoke, they're going to a side that have been pretty poor for the most part this season. Only had 3 shots on target, probably had the best chance of the game, but again, it wasn't a game where you thought they were going to create bundles and maybe look like scoring frequently. Obviously, that late red card to Freddie Woodman might be a bit of a problem at the weekend. However, I'm going to stick with my prediction here. I'm not going to change it based on the keeper sending off. I'm going for 0-0. There's no other scoreline to predict. I can easily see one of these teams nicking one, but 0-0 is the sensible scoreline here. So that's what I'm going to go for. The penultimate game on Saturday is, well, maybe again, not the most exciting on paper. It is Stoke City versus Burnley. If you take out Stoke's 6-1 win at home to Pompey, again, not the most potent attacking side. 13 scored in their other 16 games, including that 0-0 at home to Preston, where they managed 1 shot on target against a mid-table team. They won't be thrilled with that. 3 draws in a row now, including against the bottom side, albeit you could say they're unbeaten in 5. They're doing pretty well since that Carabao Cup tie, but there's no real consistent goal threat, and we're not seeing those patterns of play yet. Burnley, very efficient defensively. 6 conceded in 17 is remarkable. Only 1 conceded in their last 6. That was the defeat against Millwall. And they have started to find a few goals in recent weeks. 2 against Coventry makes it 4 in their last 3. But they're still struggling a little in front of goal. They don't look consistent. They don't look like creating bundles of chances. This isn't the team that was creating 20-25 shots a match that we saw 2 years ago. It's going to be a little bit tougher for them this time. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game again. I could easily have gone for 0-0 twice in a row. But I'm going to go for Burnley to nick it. I think Stoke against the top sides may struggle a little. You look at their last 5, that little run, all been against sides either in the bottom half and then that 1 win at Blackburn. So I'm going to go for Burnley by 1-0. I think it'll be tight. I think Burnley nick it. On to the final game on Saturday, and it's the big question of the week. Will Portsmouth finally play a game? You can't lose if you're not playing. They go away to Swansea off the back of 2 successive postponements. Floodlight failure in midweek after a postponement up in Blackburn on Saturday. And now they go into this one having had 3 weeks off since the 3-1 win against Preston. Probably not ideal with getting certain people like Colby Bishop up to speed. For Swansea, really good victory away at Derby in the week. After that gut-wrenching disappointment against Leeds, having fought back into the game, they will be delighted to win, and in the manner they did as well. They were absolutely battered from start to finish by Derby. Yes, they had more of the ball, but they had 2 shots on target all game, which they scored. They gave up the best part of 20 shots. On another day, Derby could have won it. But in the end, it was a really hard-fought defensive display, and we are seeing that a bit more from Swansea this year. Less than 1 goal a game conceded, which would be unheard of in previous seasons. They're finding a bit of pragmatism when they need it on the road in what was a really poor display, but 3 crucial points. On the flip side of that, we've not got anything to go on when it comes to Portsmouth, other than them being back at the bottom of the table. It's been a very hard start to the season for them. I think they're going to need a couple more before they get up to speed now. And I think they need to rely on that home form. They've lost a lot of games against the sides in and around mid-table. So I'm going to go for the same here. Swansea City to win and to score 2 again. I'm going for 2-0 to the hosts. And the final game is a big one on Sunday afternoon. It is Derby County versus Sheffield Wednesday. We just mentioned that Derby actually played really well against Swansea, had a lot of the chances in that match, weren't able to make them count. But if they play like that, their home form will continue to be decent. They'll be a bit frustrated that those wins have dried up though. For Sheffield Wednesday, a good win away at Hull City. Obviously forced Tim Walter to the sack, but we said this at the start of the year. What Danny Roll needed to produce with Sheffield Wednesday was just a consolidating, consistent season where they didn't have to worry about going up. They didn't have to worry about going down. They were just steady. They were in that middle of the table and could build their style for the year after. They created chances on the counter-attack. They gave up possession to Hull and they pounced and pressed when it mattered. It was a really good away display. And I think on this occasion, I'm going to back them to get something again. I think Derby are a better side at home and just a better side overall in their style of play at the minute. They don't often lose at home and they've had a lot of 1-1 draws this season. Sheffield Wednesday have had 2 in the last 6 as well. So let's finish with a third Championship's favourite scoreline. There were none in midweek. There's going to be 3 at the weekend. I'm going for 1 apiece at Pride Park. Let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for then. My 3 Championships favourite scorelines are Derby Sheffield Wednesday, as well as Blackburn Leeds and Oxford versus Millwall. I've got Sheffield United to take advantage and go top with a 1-0 win at home to Sunderland, and Burnley to go level on points with Leeds with a big win as well, 1-0 away at Stoke City. I've not gone for the highest scoring match day. We're seeing less than ever really in the Championship. The heaviest defeats, I've gone for Plymouth away at Bristol City, my club Luton at Norwich, both by 3-1. Those are just my predictions for this weekend though. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below. The penultimate episode in this house before we move towards the end of next week, hopefully. So fingers crossed that will all go well. Fingers crossed your team has a good weekend and Luton's score isn't as bad as I've predicted. However, if you want to get your predictions in, do so in the comments. You'll get a shout out if you beat my overall score next week. Like, subscribe and all that other stuff as well, as we hopefully get back to some sort of normality in the next couple of weeks. Keep your eyes peeled later as well for the Coventry City Manager special. We'll discuss all things Mark Robins and Frank Lampard. But for now, thank you very much for watching. Your support as always is appreciated. And I'll see you back here, well, in a few hours to discuss Coventry City.